Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. I really think you're going to enjoy today's program. Abe Powell is with me. He and his wife founded the Bucket Brigade service project group, heroes, whatever you want to call them, here in Santa Barbara, California. But wherever you are, you're going to want to see this. Abe Powell, The Good Life, is next. Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. I have a really interesting guest today. Abe Powell is with me. Welcome, Abe.
Thank you.
Good to have you.
Great to be here.
I was just telling Abe before we came on, I spent a lot of time reading yesterday about Abe. He's a very interesting guy. He's like somewhere between Abraham Lincoln, who he was named after, and Braveheart. I think he's like the Montecito. He's in there somewhere. He's done some amazing projects that I want to talk about, but it's first of all, I just want to say thank you because we're sitting in Montecito, not far from where the mudslides happened, for example, and so this neighborhood is literally a benefactor of what you started. So thank you. It's a wonderful thing you did. But I want to go back and kind of start with kind of where you grew up. I think you were born in Stanford,
That's correct.
but raised here.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little about growing up and kind of your family and kind of how you got to Santa Barbara.
Well, my father was working in Los Angeles for a little while, so he was born in Stanford, moved to Los Angeles. My dad was working in the aerospace industry and didn't really like it. And in the early 70s, skateboarding became a big thing. I got into skateboarding as a 5-year-old.
Oh, really?
And my dad gave me his old skateboard from his Stanford days. It was a Makaha with metal wheels, and I took it to the cool skate spot in Pacific Palisades called the Horseshoe, which is Palisades High School. And there were some cool skaters there like Stacy Peralta and some of the famous Z-Boys.
Yes.
And I proceeded to just destroy myself. The metal wheels hit on all the rocks, and I was bloody. And all the other kids made fun of me because like I had this skateboard that was like a dinosaur, and all the other kids had cool urethane wheels and more modern equipment. And so I came home to my dad, and I was just in a fit. I was bleeding everywhere, blood on my chin, my elbow. I said, Dad, this skateboard stinks. Like, come on, like all the kids are making fun of me. And he, being an engineer, was like, what do you mean they've all got cooler skateboards? So he actually went to the skate spot, looked at what they were doing. He had a master's in engineering, and he said, oh, I can do better than that. Went into his garage for 2 weeks, came out with 3 different skateboards, all of them just amazing.
No way.
And then the next day, I came home, and the house smelled horrible, like a dumpster fire. And Dad's in the kitchen cooking, which I'd never before seen in my life. And he's cooking, and I go, Dad, what does this smell? What's going on? And he opens up the fridge and pulls out, look like muffin tins. And he's like, look at this, and it's skateboard wheels, polyurethane skateboard wheels. He cooked them at home, and he's got them. And he's like, look at this, and I'm like, my dad's lost his mind. Like, he's completely insane. But he quit his job, took his skateboard molds and his skateboard things, and we moved to Santa Barbara to start the company, and that's how we got here in 1976.
And he actually went into skateboards.
He's still making skateboards today. One of the biggest skateboard companies in the world, Powell-Full.
He still is.
Yeah. He's in his late 70s making skateboards.
Oh my gosh. Now that was a great answer.
Yeah, well, lucky for me because it got me to Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
I went to a school in Pacific Palisades that didn't have one blade of grass on the playground. And moved to Santa Barbara, a Cold Spring school. There's grass everywhere. You can see the mountains, and it was like when Dorothy gets out of the house in Oz, and it went from black and white to color, and I was just like, Santa Barbara, I can live here. Like, this is
So you never left. Mm-mm. You founded Soulforce. Is that a solar energy company?
Yep.
Tell us about that.
Well, I was a philosophy major in college, and I studied ethics and epistemology. And when I came back, with a college degree and basically not knowing a whole lot about anything, I wanted to try to do something that reflected my views about my concerns about the environment and climate change, and not wanting to just advocate, but to do something concrete that would address my concern. And some family members were really interested interested in solar energy,
Mm-hmm.
and my uncle had built a solar-powered house in Montecito.
Hmm.
And so I went and looked at what he was doing and decided I wanted to do that on my mother's property that she was going to develop. And so I built myself a solar electric system, as a novice. And when I flipped the lights on in the construction trailer that we had there, and it worked. I mean, it was like, it didn't really seem like it could be possible, but,
Right.
I put the solar panel and the batteries and the inverter, and I plugged it all in, and, I turned it on, and the lights came on, and it was a light came on inside of me. And I said, this is real. This is something I can do to reduce my footprint and to, set a good example. And over time, I got more and more involved and helped other people puttering with their solar systems. And finally, I just said, I should just do this as a job.
Yeah.
This is a good thing. And I started a company.
How long ago was that?
2000.
Wow. So that was
20
a little bit
years.
ahead of where solar. I mean, you were kind of ahead of the curve on the solar idea.
Yeah, I
Probably.
went solar in 1993, and solar
Really?
panels were somewhere around $17 per watt retail. Now they're like 75 cents a watt
Oh my
retail,
gosh.
so you had to be crazy to do it because the price was so completely out of whack.
Wow.
But I just was so determined, and I'm glad I was, because it really took me in a direction that I was really happy about.
Yeah. Your wife is Jessica, Olivia, and Leo. Before we get into some of the projects, I wanted to ask you about a couple things. One is, you're a philosophy major. I can ask you this. This is kind of a philosophical question, but I read a quote from you: community is about pulling together as opposed to being pulled apart. There's a little division in the country right now. You may have noticed.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to people who may be watching this who want to make that a reality? Community is about pulling together as opposed to being pulled apart. Practically speaking, what are your thoughts on how we could try to make that happen?
Well, on the philosophical side, I am a communitarian. And when I say that, I mean that the importance of community in an individual's life is paramount.
Mm-hmm.
Where you come from, the environment, the community you grow up in is really defining of you and your life and your worldview and your expectations. And as a communitarian, one of the things that I believe firmly is that the success of the human species was not based on rugged individualism or our ability to make tools, but our ability to cooperate in greater numbers more effectively than the competing predators and other animals around us.
Mm-hmm.
And so that ability to cooperate and collaborate at scale is what I believe made us strong and put us in the position we're in now.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a system of thinking that is, how did we survive and get to where we were? If the answer is cooperation at scale, then the answer to the problem now is how important is cooperation to us? How are we going to get through the challenges we're facing now? The thing that has always worked for us has been cooperation. That's our true species success strategy. And if we try to divide apart and fight and don't see our collective interest, we lose touch with what literally keeps us alive on this planet.
Mm.
And I think as we remember that, we remember what it feels like to be in a community, and the importance of that is never more clear than in a crisis or a disaster.
Right.
Where, by yourself in a crisis, you're hoping for survival.
Right.
But with people around you and a team and friendships and relationships, you could have an opportunity for real resilience
Right.
and bounce back. But without that community around you, you're just hoping to survive.
Right. And sometimes it seems like it takes a crisis to get us to remember that.
Yes, and we've never had a better opportunity than right now. You're
We're
exactly
having lots
right.
of opportunities. Yeah, I mean
It's constant.
Yeah, I mean I love the biblical, the scripture. It's not good for man to be alone, and I always think about that because I think it's exactly true what you're saying. We're made for each other. I mean, we're made to be together, not just a husband and wife, but in general. It's not good. I mean, isolation is, I mean, you know, I'm all for solitude and periods of, but I mean, isolation as a whole is not a great thing for human beings, you know?
Yeah,
I mean,
we're not made to be alone. We're a tribe, a community,
yes,
species, I
yes,
think.
Yes. And like I've bought some terrible apartment complexes in my career. And one of the signature characteristics at low C minus, D plus grade, low, older, you know, more of a poverty environment, one of the leading characteristics is isolation. People go into their apartments and they shut their door. Mm-hmm. And literally, some people will live 5 or 10 years in an apartment and never know another person who lives in the complex. I mean, and if you think about it, addiction pushes to isolation.
Yep.
I mean, it's amazing what that truth about community, that we need each other. You know?
Yeah, psychologically, spiritually, emotionally,
yes,
economically, materially, for all of the aspects of life, and especially all the things that make life good.
Yeah.
You need a community around you.
Yeah.
And the more that we remember that, and remember that there have to be people different from us in a community. That's part of life. There are going to be people with different views and different perspectives and different religions, and that's part of our community.
Yes.
And the more we can see past our own beliefs and embrace the difference and the diversity in our community, the more able we are to enjoy the people around us.
Yes.
And that builds the quality of life and our connection to people around us. And I think ultimately our resilience and capacity to respond to the challenges we're facing.
Yeah. The political thing. Like, what if we could look each other in the mirror? I'm an Obama person and you're a Trump person. And I could look at you and see a human, right, and say, I love you. We disagree. You're a human, I'm a human, we disagree. You're not evil, I'm not evil either, turns out. But like, what if we could do that again? Like, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be great, and I think we can, and I think the choice is moment to moment. From one moment, sometimes we forget, all of us forget what we already know at times, you know, and we're reminded of what's important by the things that happen, or something a person did, or something someone said. But when we might forget for a moment and be angry and want to vilify each other for our different beliefs, but at some point, you know, hopefully by being in your community, in your family, in your church, in your synagogue, wherever that is that you go to remember your wisdom and your better self, we can find a way back to remembering that. Right? We do, you know, love thy neighbor. That is just such a simple maxim, but it's good for me and it's good for you. Because in doing that, my quality of life is improved dramatically.
Exactly.
Being in a state of compassion and love and appreciation for you and what we have here together, versus being angry that you don't, you know, want the same social programs that I want, or this military spending budget. That's really irrelevant in the bigger picture.
Right. When you're in the ICU or hospice, you're not really thinking that much about military spending.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. Well, okay, that's a great question. I mean, that's a great comment. And so going to memorials and funerals is a really important experience for me. And I go to learn about life, because when you go to someone's memorial, everything is stripped away except for what was really important to that person and that family. And what they're sharing there is this is the kernel, the essence of this person and what was beautiful about them and memorable.
Yes.
And when you do that, I've been to some really sad ones where the things that people remembered were the kind of stuff you're talking about, which is, you know, they were a good businessman, or they were a strong politician. And I've been to memorials that were really moving, where it was just like, this is a really caring person. And the relationships that this person had were deep and varied, and the fertile kind of ground that that bed of relationships created in the community around them built this, you know, just this incredible tapestry of love and friendship. And when you hear that, you're like, that's what life's about.
Yeah.
Right? you come away from a memorial like that, with a changed attitude.
Right.
I'm going to be a better
I
person.
want to be different.
I'm going to be a better person.
Yes.
I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to use my wisdom in a more concrete and regular way,
Yes. Yes.
And so, I think we need
That's
to be
powerful.
reminded of that.
Yeah.
We forget, and we need to be reminded.
Yeah, you're a very interesting guy, and I mean that in the highest possible compliment. I mean, I've never had somebody sit on that couch and say, "I go to memorial services to learn." That's wonderful, and it's true. The essence of life. I mean, we spend so much of our time around all. Here's another thing, and I'm using up a lot of our time. In the quarantine, I've reconciled with two really close friends. They both initiated with me. One of them sent me a 3-page letter. We hadn't talked in 11 years. Weird stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stupid. I get a letter in the mail. He still wrote a handwritten letter. We reconciled. We've been together 3-4 times. We're like, it's back. It's back. I got a
Beautiful.
phone call one day, Colorado number. It's this friend who I love. He's crying. We're reconciling. It's like a love fest. So the quarantine, I don't know, you mentioned earlier the crisis we're in now, but I think sometimes it can take, unfortunately, circumstantial stuff to get us back to, what are we doing? Why are we fighting again?
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. It's been 11 years. I can't remember what we're fighting about.
Exactly. That's right.
But anyway, okay. That's fascinating. We have the mudslides. If you're hearing construction, if you're watching this program, it's because of the mudslides we had in this neighborhood. There's a house being rebuilt right across the way here.
Yeah, 2.5 years later.
2.5 years later as we sit here. So on January 28, 2018, you and your wife Jessica founded the Santa Barbara Bucket Brigade to respond to the mudslides. More than 3,000 volunteers have responded. You've dug out 90 homes, probably more than that. You were the 2018 Montecito Citizen of the Year, which I know you probably don't care too much about, but the community recognized the work. How did you decide to do that? What's it been like?
The decision was one that was informed by over a decade of work, community organizing up in the foothills. So the Mountain Drive Community Association is where I kind of learned my community chops from the elders there. They'd been fighting fires and landslides for a long time, and they formed an association not to tell people what color to paint their fences or how to build their houses, but to work together to keep everyone safe when these fires and landslides happened. And they formed a volunteer fire department. And I joined that and served as a volunteer firefighter for years, became the president of that association, and learned about grassroots community resilience. And in a community sense, like, we're in this together. We know this mountain can come and get us. We know the fires can come and get us. Let's work together. And when the T fire hit in 2008, the work that we'd been doing for 10 years paid off. And we had 20 minutes to evacuate the whole community. Reverse 911 failed, and the system that the neighbors had put together to communicate with each other, our neighborhood phone book set up geographically and alphabetically, so we could call if the fire was coming this way, we would call each other this way. If the fire was coming that way, we'd call from east to west.
Really?
And the fire started, and we did reverse 911, and the volunteers went up and did knocking on doors and helped make sure neighbors got out, elderly people, people with disabilities, and we self-evacuated the whole community in 20 minutes, 25, 30 minutes, and it validated all that we'd been working for,
Wow.
all of this community effort, that it can save lives, and it built this incredible trust and morale.
Yeah.
You can imagine how we felt. I mean, we'd lost 210 homes, but we still felt like we were a part of something.
Yeah.
And, the volunteer fire company put out fires in 4 houses, and that was a beautiful thing. And that experience of a decade of working with the community and reminding each other that with actions that, we can get through this, whatever it is, we'll find a way. And even if we don't have an answer to all of it, well, let's chip away at it together.
Right.
And so we had this wisdom that was taught to me by my elders, and, the time came. So, January 2018, we're looking at a problem that is on a scale that nobody had ever seen in
Right.
my lifetime.
Right.
And, obviously we didn't feel like, hey, we can solve this. But my wife and I were sitting together. A neighbor right next door here got word from his insurance company that they weren't going to give him money to clean up his house. His house was, 2 feet deep in mud inside and out. His wife was sick with cancer, and he didn't know what to do. And he just told me, I don't know what I'm going to do about this. And we knew that if we didn't get the mud out of his house, off his floors, that it would destroy his home within a matter of days, right? It's going to get hard. It's going to settle the floors down, the foundation, the walls will start rotting. You just can't, it's a problem. And we said, the insurance companies aren't going to help him, and we got mad. My wife and I were sitting at the table, we were looking at each other, and first we were sad, and then we were mad, and then we were sad again, and then we just, I said, honey, we should just go dig him out. And she was like, yeah, we should. So we got on the phone, we got on Facebook, we started calling friends, and we just said, hey guys, we're going to go dig them out. We don't know what to do about all this, but we're going to go dig this house out. We're going to dig one house. And that day, we showed up. We set up a table next to the sheriff so people could sign in and get past the blockades. And the sheriffs were helping us. And 50 people showed up and just went to work. I mean, we cleared out that house, cleared out the yard, and it was just like a little ant farm of people smiling, muddy. There was senior citizens in the group, there were young people, there were women, there were men. It was just, a cross-section of the community. Most of the people didn't know the homeowner. And by the end of the day, it felt like something magic had happened. We didn't know what was happening. I was exhausted, my back was hurting. And the neighbors had all lined up from around the block to see what was going on. Because at first they thought maybe it's looters.
Oh.
We didn't know what was happening. There's this team of people, and we had this mountain of mud and 50 filthy people standing on the front. And a neighbor came to me and said, hey, what are you doing here? And I said, hey, we're digging them out. Like, this is our community, we're just digging them out. We're a bucket brigade. And they said, well, will you come to my house? And that was the moment of truth. That was really the birth of the bucket brigade, because at that moment I was thinking, I got to go back to my job. I got to, what am I going to do? But I looked at all the mud, and I just said, yeah, we'll come to your house. And the next neighbor's like, well, what about my house? And what about my house? And so we pulled out a piece of paper. End of the day, we had 13 people signed up for help. And so, we started 13 houses. We said, okay, we'll come back tomorrow. So Monday we came back and we put out the call again, and 20 people showed up, and we dug. Tuesday we came back, Wednesday, Thursday.
You did a house a day?
Yeah. And by Thursday, we had so many people signed up. We had like over 25 residences signed up to do it. And we had so many volunteers coming in that the county was concerned about the parking. This is a disaster area. There's cars everywhere. They said, what are we going to do here? And so we said, well, can we move to the park? Because the park was closed. And they said, sure. So Thursday we moved to Manning Park. We set up there. The Red Cross came through and helped us. They brought us a big truck to store tools in, and wheelbarrows and shovels. Direct Relief came in and gave us a big check and helped us pay for some of the shovels and equipment we needed, because I'd spent $20,000 on my credit card. And Direct Relief, Tom Teig stepped up and said, we're going to help you. And we said, great. Saturday, we set up in the morning not knowing what would happen, and 350 people lined up.
Oh my God.
To help. And we went out and we worked on like 9 different sites that day, and then moved on to a couple more by the end of the day. Restaurants partnered up to feed everybody. The Red Cross was bringing safety supplies, and it was just beautiful. It was like this pageant of people with shovels and wheelbarrows going out into the community. And I think what people saw was something that we need to see really badly in a crisis, which is this a signal that we're going to pull together. That was the signal. It was like throwing a rock out into the middle of a pond.
Right.
And the waves started going out, and the signal went out, and the signal was, we got this. We're going to help each other. We're not going to start looting. It's not, we're not going to turn on each other.
Right.
We're actually going to go out and dig each other out. And, Sunday, more people came, even more. It was bigger than Saturday. And the next week we did Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and we did this for months. We just worked every weekend, and hundreds of people came out each day, and each time it just reinforced this message: we're a community, we stick up for each other, and you know,
Wow.
everybody's welcome to help in this. And that really, I think, was a shift for me personally, a spiritual shift. It proved that what I'd hoped was true about this community, about
Right.
this society. To me, that was the proof. Like, this is who we are.
Yep.
This is real.
Yep.
And so from that point on, I was a changed person. It was like a rebirth.
Oh.
I saw myself, my relationship to community and the world in a new light.
That is unbelievable. Your motto is bold move, or I read that.
That's the family motto.
That's the family. That was a bold move.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're right, the ripples went out, but somebody had to throw the rock. I mean, you know, somebody had to step out and say, well, and it's amazing. I mean, you may have thought you were crazy, potentially, right?
Sure.
I mean, it's like I read a meme the other day. It's like, you know, Noah was probably called a conspiracy theorist until it started to rain.
That's right.
You know.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you probably thought, what am I doing here? And then the next thing you know, you've got 3,000. I mean, how many volunteers have you had?
Now we're over about 4,500 since 2018.
4,500 volunteers, and those people are blessed by I mean, thank God for them, but they're also blessed. I mean, I'm assuming that they may have had a similar experience to you.
Yeah.
You go in and dig somebody's house out, and I mean, you're blessed. You're filled up. I mean, wouldn't you say?
Well, our motto at the Bucket Brigade was helping heals the helpers and the helped.
Right.
And so what we saw was people coming out of their isolated lives. You talked about the isolation, people
Yep.
living in apartments.
Right.
People coming out of their apartments, showing up and standing in a crowd of 350 people,
Right.
willing to ride out into mud and filth and debris on their weekend for free to help people they don't know. Right? And so you think about that, and you realize, like, there are more people in this world like me. I'm not alone.
Right.
I'm not the only crazy person.
Right.
There's more, you know, in
Right.
fact, there's a tribe of crazy people that I can come do this with.
Right.
And, you know, so what we found was, you know, the number of volunteers really belies the campaign, because a lot of people, and in fact, almost a majority of them came at least twice. So they came once, some people came twice, some people came 20, 30 times.
Oh my
And it
gosh.
became their weekend kind of way of expressing themselves and their community.
Yeah.
And communities within the Bucket Brigade formed of people that met new friends
Right.
and created new relationships. And there's this whole group of women that were the kind of core leadership team of the Bucket Brigade, called the Mud Sisters. And they hike together, they, you know, go to beach walks together, they, you know, they volunteer together,
Wow.
they go work at other organizations, but they formed a little community within our community, and that's kind of, you know, the spirit. That's the spirit of what we do.
Unbelievable. You know, if you're bored, it's not a bad idea to serve.
Or depressed,
Or depressed.
or anxious.
Yes.
Because the biggest answer, the easiest answers to anxiety, depression, and isolation are stop thinking about yourself and think about what you can do for somebody else.
Yes.
And it gets you thinking outward,
Yes.
as opposed to thinking inward. And if you
Yes.
actually take action on it, it gets you connected to somebody.
Right.
And that connection sends all kinds of signals within you that you need to
Right.
be a healthy person, and it stops the isolation, stops the anxiety, stops the depression, and gives you a chance to come back into life again.
That is beautiful. Somebody, a similar note, a mentor of mine once told me, if you're out of money, go give something away.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a different way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because when you get in that depressed or anxious or bored, purposeless kind of mentality, you're thinking about yourself pretty much exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then
it's
you
very
get out of that, and all of a sudden
self-focused.
you're out of it. You're out of
Mhm.
your head. You're, you know,
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
Yeah, I don't think we're meant to be. I mean, the whole self-reflection thing is great. I like that. But the majority of our life, you know, we're designed to focus outward on
Yes.
others. And when we do that, good things happen.
Yes. COVID. I know you're now in the mask thing and the face shields. What can people do today to help?
We're asking everyone in Santa Barbara County to join our Growing Community campaign this fall. And we're telling everybody who can to grow fresh vegetables in a Victory Garden at their home this year to help feed the hungry in this community. We'll come pick it up. And we're going to take the national tradition of Victory Gardening and we're going to turn it into a modern community crowdsourcing campaign. So people grow at home, drivers come and pick up the extra. Anybody who grows zucchinis grows too many zucchinis, right?
Right. Yeah,
so,
right.
you know, we take the extra, we take it, we weigh it, we sort it, we take it to the food bank, Catholic Charities, Unity Shop, and 60 different partners around the county, and
Beautiful.
we feed hungry people. We're launching the campaign September 14th, and
Okay.
we're going to run for a full year at the very least.
Bucketbrigade.
SBbucketbrigade.org.
SBbucketbrigade.org.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we have the technology to clone people yet, but we need like 100 of him. I can tell you that right now. Seriously, I'm not trying to flatter you. This is like amazing. So thank you for
Thank
who
you.
you are. And I look forward to getting to know you more. Abe Powell, everybody. 1 in a million. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for coming.